Hi everyone, I'm Lisa from the Audubon Society. Thanks for tuning in. I'm here today with Eek, who is one of our barred owls here at the Audubon Society that we take care of. Eek has been with us for quite a while. She is an old lady and she's kind of an expert at what she does by now, since she's met a lot of students over her years with us, and she's been to a lot of fundraisers and she's been to a lot of luncheons and things like that. So she's certainly been around for a long time. Eek was found in New Hampshire. That's where she was originally from. She was found on I-93, the highway that kind of goes between New Hampshire and Vermont. And being found on the side of the highway, it was assumed she was probably hit by a car. She has an injury that makes it so that she can't really fly very well, and she can't really see very well out of her left eye. So if you see on her left eye, she's got a lot of scar tissue. Her left eye looks a lot lighter than her right eye. She probably can't see at all out of that eye anymore. So she may sometimes even blink more often on that side or wink on that side more than the other side, probably because of that scar tissue. I bet it bothers her a little bit. Also, her left wing has some broken bones in it that didn't heal quite right. So that's why she's living with us. She can't really live on her own anymore and take care of business and be able to find all the food that she needs to find. She might have actually had a nest. She might have been a mom. Who knows? We don't actually know what her story is. It was the springtime. And in the spring, that is the time when the owls are trying to raise their families. Usually around March is when barred owl babies are hatching out of their nests and starting to learn how to fly on their own. She was an adult though when we were found. She already had her adult plumage, her adult feathers in, so we don't exactly know exactly how old she was, but that was in 2006. Eek started working for the Audubon Society about 4 or 5 months before I did. So she and I have been here about the same time. So she and I have been learning together throughout all these years. Now when you look at her, you'll probably notice she's just got so many interesting features. She's got this beautiful round head. You can't really see on an owl where its ears are. Some people think those feather tufts that are sticking up on the top of an owl's head are their ears, but they're not. Owls have really cool hearing. They're really, really good at being able to hear sounds and use that to hunt. So their ears are actually asymmetrical. They're not across their head from each other like ours are. There's one down low and there's one up high. So if we could part her feathers, you'd see that she'd have an ear right about there and she'd probably have an ear right about there. She's got this kind of circle around her face. Maybe you can see that line. It almost looks a little bit heart-shaped, but almost round. And that's kind of like a satellite dish. We call that, it's the owl's facial disc. And anytime sounds are coming in towards the owl, the facial disc makes those sounds go right towards where their ears are. So it makes them excellent at hearing. Because if you think about it, this kind of owl is out during the time when there's not as much sound, and sometimes there's not a lot of light. So they have to use their ears to be able to find their food. In fact, they've done some studies with owls, which are really interesting, where they've found that owls blindfolded in a barn that has no light in it can find their food 9 out of 10 times just by being able to hear it. That's a pretty amazing thing. So their ears, even though you can't see them, are one of their most amazing features. But when you look at them, you can see their eyes. So I always get fascinated by looking in their eyes. She's kind of got those dark brown puppy dog eyes. You can get lost in her eyes. And they're really large. Now you've probably heard owl eyes are large, but let's really imagine what this would be like. So if you were an owl, your eyeball would be probably about the size of a softball. So it would take up a lot of the room in your skull. And when you see an owl skull, you can see that their eyeball socket is really, really large compared to the rest of their skull. In fact, when they've taken x-rays of owls, which we've had to have our owls x-rayed so that they could keep an eye on how their eyes are doing, especially if they have injuries to their eyes, you can actually see in the x-ray the two big globes where their eyes are larger than the globe where their brain is. This is really amazing. Not because owls aren't smart and aren't good at what they do. They're really, really well adapted to be good hunters, and to be able to get the food that they need and to be able to survive in the wild. But they don't have to do math and they don't have to spell, so they don't really need the large brain that humans have. They're able to do what they can do with the brain the size of theirs. So those big, big eyes are kind of light bulb shaped. They're big in the front and they're smaller in the back. And one of the things I find the most interesting about owl eyes, they've got two sets of cells in their eyes, just like we do. They've got rods and cones. You've probably heard that cones are for color, rods are for black and white. But they have more rods than cones, which means they're going to be a little bit better at seeing when the light is really low or when there's not a lot of light at all. They can really see motion well, and they can see shapes and things like that. But they're not going to really be able to say, oh, that's pink and that's teal and that's all those amazing colors that we find at the paint store. They have their eyes specially adapted to be able to see at nighttime. And most of those cells, here's the last thing because I just love eyes. I could talk about eyes forever. The cells for seeing in an owl's eye are mostly on the top of their eye and on the back, not so much on the bottom. So if an owl is on the ground, it's going to turn its head upside down to be able to see. That's why we often see those pictures of like the burrowing owls that live on the ground with their heads turned upside down because they're trying to see better. Even other birds, you might notice, will do that sometimes. They'll turn their heads to be able to see you better. Birds really like to be up above what they're looking at, which is why a barred owl would be found sitting up in a tree. They'd be sitting in a tall bush. And because these kinds of owls are sort of suburban and urban owls, they can actually live in cities and in towns, and they'll often be up on a light pole. A couple of winters ago, there was a barred owl that was photographed in Providence, right in Burnside Plaza, hanging out near where the skating arena is, and it was hanging out on those big poles that are around Burnside Park, and it was hunting rats. Good job. We like that when our barred owls are doing things like that. So all of our raptors can hunt something like a rat or a mouse because those are really common at nighttime. But our barred owls will also like to eat things like frogs and snakes. And they've done some studies with barred owl pellets. Those are the things they regurgitate after they have eaten, the parts of the animal that they can't really digest. And they have found that one of the most common rodents that barred owls have been eating have been voles. Now, voles look a lot like a mouse. They've just got a little bit shorter ears and a shorter tail. But in a place that has a field and a forest or a lot of different habitats, voles are very common. You can find them in the forest, there are forest voles, and you can find them in the fields. So barred owls can kind of find their food in a lot of places like that.